Hello everyone and welcome to another Carbon 60 video by me, K. Elmer, and in this video I would like to share with you what I wish I knew before I ever started making C60 oil about vacuum filters. And you might think that it's kind of a simple thing, but it's actually way more complicated than I ever realized, and it's taken me this long to figure it all out and decide, what I like the best. So I learned a lot, and I wanted to share what I learned with you. First off, though, that we got to do the disclosures. This material is for research purposes only. C60 oil is not approved for consumption by the FDA. You understand that making and consuming C60 oil is experimental, and you do so at your own risk. I do not endorse any products. I do not have a stake in any C60 company or product. I do not get paid in any way to make videos. This material is purely my own research that I willingly share with others. All right, let's jump in. Now, it's basically very simple. If you're making your own C60 oil, it's 4 steps. It's you add the C60 to whatever oil of your choice, you stir for a couple of weeks, and you let it settle for 10 days or a couple of weeks. You can change up the duration of these 2 steps any which way you like. You don't want to skimp on settling though, so you can go longer. That's my tip there, and you'll have you'll have C60 oil. Now the last step is filtering. So now why would you filter? That's obviously a really good question. Well, here's the deal. If you don't filter it, okay, you are going to ingest either this. Here's an example of this picture here. This is a picture of filtering C60 oil after the 2 weeks without letting it settle. So here you've got all of this residual C60 and whatever else is going to be in there stuck in the filter. Now, if you don't filter that, you are the filter, and that's going to go in your body. Now, the next thing is if you do let it sit for 10 days, this is what the filter looks like. So you can see that settling gets rid of, basically you save the residual C60 and you don't get it caught in the filter. But if you let it sit and you still filter it, you will still come out with this brown stuff. And this brown stuff is most likely, and a lot of people speculate, clearly it's residual C60. It's the very fine particulates of C60, whatever impurities that the C60 pulled out of the oil, and it's this brown stuff. And it's always there. Okay, so here's my point. If you don't filter, and it's your prerogative because you're taking this stuff. The bottom line is that your body, your filter, your kidneys will have to filter this for you. And for some of you, maybe it's not a problem. For someone like me, where I actually have kidney stones in my body, when this stuff gets, it's kind of, think of it like this. It's like river rocks, and all of a sudden you throw a bunch of pebbles into the river rocks, and the water still has to pass through. Those little pebbles are going to fill in all the gaps between the river rocks, and it's going to clog you up like a beaver dam, okay? And that's what happens to me, and it causes me a lot of pain if I drink anything that hasn't been filtered yet. I mean, the C60 oil. And so that's why I steadfastly filter, because I have kidney stones, and I've had them in the past, obviously. Now, for those of you who don't have any issues with kidney stones, it's your call. But I'm just letting you know, if that's your issue, then you definitely need to filter, or you will feel it. Okay, and that's why I filter. So, anyways, let's jump right in here. Now, these are the types of vacuum filters. You've got 2 basic types. You've got the single-use plastic ones that use a PES membrane, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. And that's the type of membrane that they use right in this little line right there, and this middle part of this bottom of the funnel is a membrane, and that is what they're using as the filter. This is the funnel, this is the reservoir bottle, and basically it's a plastic one-time use. And it's kind of unfortunate that some people don't realize that at first, and it is not very clear. That's why I'm doing this video, because I didn't really know either. I bought one of these in the very, very beginning, and I tried to clean the thing, and it just didn't clean, and couldn't figure out why until I did more research. But it's kind of sad though, because people are commenting on Amazon that these things aren't that great, because they couldn't clean them. And it's like, well, you're not supposed to clean them. You cannot clean them. And when you're done with it, you throw the top part away and keep the bottle. So they're single use, and that's the first thing you should know about these plastic guys. Oh, and they also break if you have too strong a vacuum pump, which I learned the hard way. Now, the other kind of vacuum filter are these multi-use ones. They're made out of Pyrex. They're made out of borosilicate glass. They're really sturdy. They can take a lot of heat. They can take a lot of cold. They're really solid type of glass. And they come in two different ways. They either have a sintered disc or a pore plate, and I'll let you explain what that is. But this is what they look like. So you can get a glass one, or you can get plastic ones. So you throw the tops away on this one and buy a new one, or you can just use these over and over and over with filter paper. Now, instead of having the membrane or the filter right here that comes with the filter, you have to buy filter paper that you put at the bottom of these funnels. All right? So let's go through the actual parts of these things, and believe me that you don't think about this stuff until you start having to use them all. So now here again, I'm just going to go over it one more time. This is the simplest model. Okay, it is so simple. It's only two parts. It's the top part, which is the funnel, and it's the bottom part, which is the glass flask. Okay, and that's it. At the bottom of the funnel is a permanent filter plate, and it can come in either just a glass with holes in it, or it can come as a, like, basically when they say coarse sintered glass, it's basically crushed up glass compressed like particle board, right? And it's kind of glued into the bottom of this thing. And that's it. You've got just the two pieces. One thing that's real important about buying these things is if you're buying the top separate from the bottom, you want to make sure that you get the right joint size, and that's the 2440. So you see that number right there. You'll see it in the advertisements. Make sure, because that's you're going to know if this thing's going to fit into this. You got to get the appropriate joint size. All right. And then of course there's this little part right here, which is for the vacuum hose, and it's the two pieces. Now, this other guy right here, which is, what's really hard about this is all the people that sell these things call these two things the same thing. They call them glass Buchner vacuum filters, right? And so you don't know really which one they're talking about unless you really look at the picture. Now, this guy right here is way more complicated. It comes in four parts. There's the top part right here, which is the glass funnel. That's a separate piece of glass. Then this little mid-piece glass called the glass support base. And in between the funnel and the support base is the filter plate that you put the paper between. And then you would use this clamp to hold the top and the bottom together. Okay, so there's four parts right there. There's three parts right there. And the fourth part right down here is the glass flask. So these three things connect with the clamp, and then you stick it on top of this flask. And so the difference between these two really is that this funnel fits inside the flask, and this funnel, when assembled, fits over the flask. It's semantics, and that's really what the different pieces are. So, and then of course you've got your vacuum nozzle as well. This will all come in really. It'll make more sense while going over the parts here. Now, the thing about the filter plates. Okay, so you've got two different models, right? You got one that clamps together and you put the filter in between, and then you got one that just has it stuck in, it's permanently in the funnel, all right? Now, the thing about the filter plates that you put the filter on top of, okay, so this one, you put the filter on top of this guy. This one, you put it in between the two pieces here. Now, the thing about this filter plates, when you're looking at models like this, is you can buy them either as sintered, which is the glass, like the compressed glass, or you can buy them as pore plates. So I just wanted to show you the picture so you can see that there's a difference between the two. So when you see the word pore plate, it's just glass with holes in it. And you see the word sinter, it means compressed glass, crushed glass. And that's the two differences. And you'll see in a demo here at the end what the difference is when you use those. Okay, now the thing about the coarse now, and the coarse comes in two different ways as well. You can get, this can come in coarse, and this always comes in coarse, okay? So right in here, there's like a little coarse filter plate on top of the glass support base. I know, it gets a little crazy. But anyway, this is what it looks like, okay? If you take that top part off, you get this bottom part, and that thing fits over the flask. Okay, well, right in the middle is that compressed glass, what they call a coarse filter. And this guy here that just fits on top, that's a coarse filter as well. So you've got this environment where they use the same words for a lot of different things. So that's why it was so confusing in the beginning for me, because you'd read something and it'd say the exact same words two times, but there were two different things. So it's kind of nutty. And so when you're buying coarse filters, the thing to know is that it's basically meant to be porous, right? So they crush the glass and compress it, but they want to compress it at a certain psi, and the more you compress it, the tighter the holes get between the glass. And so you've got these different sizes, the 1 all the way through 6, and then it basically translates to this table. It seems that all the ones I didn't know any of this too. I just bought one, and it just happened to be 15 to 40 micron. And really what that means is you're going to put a piece of filter paper on top of this guy, right? And then whatever the filter doesn't catch, it's going to get caught in here. And so it kind of acts as a double filter. But you could, if you really wanted to make sure that nothing, like if you're dealing with viruses and things like that in the lab, you're going to want to make sure that nothing gets through. So you're going to have like the paper, and you're going to want that coarse filter right in here to be the same size that you would want to use, right? But for the purposes of making C60 oil, the idea about C60 is you want to get it less than 0.2 micron. The paper, and then using the coarse filter. There's obviously you'd really kind of technically want to get it down this low, but it seems like these are the only ones, the most common ones you can buy. So this is what I use, and it works just fine, and I'll show you what it looks like. Stuff does get by the filter and get stuck in this coarse filter, okay, the filter paper, and then it will get stuck into this, let's just call it a filter stone or something. But the idea though is that it goes through paper, and then it goes through this, and then it goes into the flask, and this acts as a second filter. So if you really want to get into it, you can buy a very, very, very coarse filter to go with your vacuum filter. Okay, see how it gets confusing? All right, hopefully I haven't been confusing. Now, when you're looking at the types of filter paper that you want to use, always remember the diameter of your funnel, okay? So you've got the funnel right here, and this thing has a particular diameter. All of mine have a 70 millimeter. They can be bigger, they can be smaller, and so when you buy the paper, it needs to fit. And so the first thing you want to make sure is that it's the right diameter, because I have screwed up and bought the wrong size. Now also too, if you're using powdered C60, you only need to filter it once after you let it settle, and it's recommended at the 0.22. Now that's based off the rat study, and the means micron. So 0.22 microns, we're going off of what they used in the rat study and the type of filter. Now I got a filter guide of all the different materials that filters are made out of, paper filters, in the link below, in the links in the video description, okay, if you want to read up about them. But if you read the original rat study, the type of filter they used was a cellulose acetate. Okay, so basically everybody sticks with the rat study formula. They just use a 0.22 micron cellulose acetate filter that they put in their vacuum filter. See how this works? Use the word filter like 3,000 times for different things. Anyway, so if using pulverized C60, the recommendation from Red Lion is that you filter it first with a 20 micron filter. Usually it's cellulose paper, right? And then a 10. And then over the time that I've been doing it, I've discovered that when I use pulverized, I just skip the 20. I just use a 10 micron filter, and then I filter again with 0.22. So that's kind of how I do it with pulverized. But if you just follow the pure instructions right off the website, then you just use a 10 micron. And this is what it looks like, just little discs of paper. Okay. Now the next thing you need to know is the tubing. Now tubing connections, they vary by filter. So when you look at these different funnels, right, they've got like this little vacuum nozzles. They vary in size, and so I took a look at all three, and they measured from 8 millimeters to 15 millimeters. So what happens is that if you guys have a Filter 8 vacuum pump that you can get off Amazon, the hose adapter will fit most vacuum filters. That's what this hose adapter is for the Filter 8. But now, most recently, Swift started selling now they ship with their new models. They ship the filters with a filter adapter on the hose. The very first ones that I bought did not have a filter adapter, which is just basically a rubber hose attached to the tubing. Okay, and so now the Swift hose that comes with the pump today does not is not going to fit the filters, okay, the nozzles. And this is the difference here. This is the filter 8, and that's the Swift tubing. And there is no way, I tried, there's no way you can get this adapter to fit on any of the glass ones. So if you just have a Swift and you got this tube, you can't use the glass ones. Okay, so the reason I can is because I originally bought a filter 8, which came with this tube. And then, of course, the filter 8 after about a year kind of just pitters out. And then I bought a Swift. So I actually used my filter 8 hose with my Swift pump, and it works perfectly. But you need this bigger. You see how much bigger it is? You need this guy in order to fit onto the nozzle of the filter. And then lastly, just as when using a stronger pump, stronger than filter 8 or Swift, which is these two little pumps, are less than 1 cubic feet per minute. But if you use anything greater than that, then I highly recommend that you use tubing with a minimum of 5 millimeter thickness. And the reason is, if it's not thick enough, it's going to collapse in on itself, and you won't be able to get a good vacuum on the flask. Okay, so you want to get something that's pretty thick. And what I use for this is I actually use aquarium filter. The filter for aquariums, it comes with this really thick hose. That thing works perfectly, and so I use that, and that works great. Now, from a standpoint of costs, this is what it's going to cost you to filter your C60, and the idea here is the different ways you could do it. So just off the top, if you're going to buy a single use, that's going to cost you about $10.92. If you buy 12, if you buy a case at a time. Now the ones that have the clamp are $49.99. The ones that are just the regular suction filter that doesn't have the clamp is $38.13. The one that's got the glass pour plate, $42.86. And then the filters themselves. Now the .22, the smaller the porosity of the filter paper, the more it costs. And so I get them right now for $21.99. You get 50 at a time. And if you're getting the 10 micron filters, right now I can't find any on Amazon. You can only find the 11 micron filters. It's cellulose, which means it's paper. You get 100 at a time for $13.48. So these are the various costs that you're going to have to incur to put together your filter device if you choose to filter. The other thing too is obviously you're going to need a pump. I did a separate video on pumps, so you can go watch that video about the different kinds of pumps and kind of give you an idea how they work and stuff. But like I said, I use the tubing that comes with the filter 8 vacuum pump. So if you don't have a pump, just buy the filter 8, so you'll have the tube and you'll have the pump, and that comes for $39.99. So overall, you can make a combination of these different things so that you can have a filter rig, and the price range is going to be about $100 to $120. Okay, and that $120 is if you decide to go with a much stronger pump and better hoses. And so, as you know from the video I made about pumps, I use a Kozyvacu at 3.5 cubic feet per minute, and it cost me $58.99. So the ideal, like the most you'd spend is $121 to have like this really fast, strong pump glass, filter. Or you can just go and get the least expensive one for $100. So the delta between the cheaper versus the better is so low that it's something to think about. That it's so it's not a lot of difference between getting the best you can get versus just going good enough. All right, so that's something important about the price. Now let's talk about which is better. And so when you talk about which is better, I look at it from a standpoint of quality of output, how fast that thing works, how easy it is to clean, and can I get replacement parts for it. So why don't we just take a look at this little video I created about, this was my demo. And what I initially thought I was going to do was I got all three. I got brand new funnels for my glass Sintered one. This is what I'd been using for over a year now. I've been using this model here. And so I got a brand new one for the test, and I'd hoped that I bought some extra Swift pumps, and I thought it'd be a really great idea, to hook up a Swift pump to all three of these guys, and then do this, like a race, right? But then two things happened. One, there's no way I could get the tube on a Swift pump the tube that comes with this guy to fit onto the nozzles. That was my first lesson learned. And the second lesson learned was one of these two didn't even work. So I bought 3 Swifts now, and only 2 of them have worked. I'm sending the other one back for a refund. So that nixed that idea. So instead, what I had to do was do a combination of using a Swift pump with a with that filter 8 tube, and I connected it to one of them, and then I had to pull out my Kozyvacu, and I used that with the other one. So I didn't get to run the race to see which one was faster, but I do have anecdotal observations that indicate that which one was faster and which one was slower. So now this was my the 3 I bought, and so right here you can see right here is the Coarse filter inside the glass base for this type of filter. And then right here is the one I've been using for a while, and this is what I used to call the stone, but it's basically the Sintered filter that's in that funnel. And then that one right there is the Pore, the glass Pore plate, and this is just a plate of glass with holes drilled in it. Okay, and that's how that filter works. Okay, so I got all 3. I took identical. I just had to have. I've been working on this other experiment, and so I have some C60 oil that has been setting for about 2 weeks. So what I did was I filled up each one of these with approximately 300 milliliters, and then because I'd used pulverized C60, I had to run them twice. I first ran them through an 11 micron filter paper. I put a paper here, I put a paper on top of that, put a paper on top of that, and so I ran them through the 11 once, and then I redid it again at 0.22, and you'll see kind of the experiment. And this right here. Now that's the one that I've been using for a year, and this is what happens. And you can see, earlier you can know that this was pure white, and then this is what happens over a year. And what this implies clearly is that even if you have paper on top of this thing, the paper filter, that you're still going to get C60 that's going to seep into your sintered glass. And so over time, it's just going to turn brown, and then I'm sure it's going to turn black, and it's just going to get so thick that it just won't work one day. But after 1 year, that's what it's going to look like. And this is kind of this other one here that I've got. This is one that I used in the vacuum pump video, and what was real interesting about that is I put paper in here, but you can see by the pattern of accumulation that you can see that the oil went around the paper, and just this whole ring ended up being the filter, and so so this one, every one of them you buy, by the way, is a little different. So this one, it didn't, I don't know, for whatever reason, wasn't able to seal around the edges, and so the edges took in a lot of the C60 oil and acted as the filter itself. Okay, and that was my other one, and that's just from that one use. So now this is what I was using for pumps. This is the Swift pump I've got, my filter rate tubing. You know that from the other video, and it fits just well. And now this is the thing that this is the adapter when you're using the plastic ones, and so this fits just as well on the plastic one. And the point that I want to make about tubing is that if it's impossible to put it on if you don't have that little black adapter. So now what happens now is Swift now sells pumps. They sell tubing with this, and as you can see, the size is just totally different. And so there's no way you can get this little guy that comes with the Swift on these hoses. So this is when I pulled out my Kozyvacu, which is another vacuum pump, a much bigger one, a much stronger one, and I started connecting them up. So I've got, basically, if you can see in the background, I've got a Swift pump plugged up into this guy, pulling it through, and I've got my Kozyvacu plugged into this guy, and I'm pulling it through, and I'm filtering all of the oil. This right here is at the 11 micron paper filter stage, and so everything is starting to come through. Now, when I was finished doing one full run of 11 micron, and remember now, the reason I'm doing it twice is because I'm using pulverized C60. You have to filter it twice if you want to get a really high quality product, okay? If you're just using powdered C60, just running it once should be fine, okay? So now at the end of the run, and I used all 3 of the different filters, this is how it came out. Basically, first of all, this is the Pore plate. Now you can see the Pore plate is perfectly clean because it's just plain glass, and this was the quality of the end product after filtering it through 11 and 0.22. Now this other one, you can see, it's kind of if you see it through the light, I didn't pick it up, but if you see it through light, it's kind of a dusty dusty rose, dusty purple color. And so then this other one here, this is the sintered glass filter, and this one also produced the same level of quality in terms of it was kind of like this, like kind of a muddy purple. I guess muddy is probably the better word. And so this was the muddy purple. And then this guy here, you can see it's no longer pure white, but it's also not brown. So that this time, this particular filter right there happened to really hold the filter paper quite well, and not as much got around it. Okay, now this guy right here is the one that you clamp on. And one of the things I wanted to show is that this also, this was white before, and then this also basically, had C60 seeping through the 2.2 paper, or the 0.22 paper, and into this coarse thing. So this is not immune either to absorbing some of the C60, and it also then needs to be cleaned out to make sure that this doesn't get stuck in the coarse, the sintered, right? The glass sinter. Anyway, and so, but here's the thing. Look at that. What's really interesting was the quality of the output. The final product was so much better. I mean, this is perfect. This is a dark, rich purple. The darker the color, the more C60's in that purple, because you got to realize this is 80% MCT and 20% coconut oil. When I started, this was perfectly clear. So to end up with a dark purple means I've got a very high saturation rate of C60 in the oil. And it's essentially pristine C60 oil at that point. But then these two guys, they're purple if you shine the light, but they're just kind of muddy. And so there you go. From an output standpoint, there's a huge difference between those three filters. Now, this is the filter paper. Well, when I ran it through the 11 micron filter, this is the glass sinter, this is the pore plate, obviously, and then this is the clamp model. And so you can see that there's really, when you look at the filters, the only thing that's kind of funky is this guy doesn't look as dark as these two. So the pore plate didn't seem, the 11 micron paper didn't seem to pick up as much, because if there's this much in the oil, because remember, this all came from the same batch, and this is all that filter held, and you could tell, there's a clear reason why it's so muddy. But what's really weird is that even though this picked up so much more, it's still muddy. And then this guy, they all actually at this stage at 11, they all came out muddy, but this one was by far the most muddy. And when I did it the second time with 0.22 micron, we'll take a look at those filters. You'll see that at this stage, you can see where the pore plate really picks it up, because this is a much thinner porosity filter paper, and so you can see it took out a lot of impurities and a lot of residual particulates, and so it really did do a much better job. And this one, of course, is like literally a solid thing. I mean, this was the sintered glass, the one in the middle, and this clearly, it just filtered out everything. And then this guy right here was the clamp, and it as well as this one, you can tell it's so jet brown, that it did take out a lot of the impurities. But the proof's in the pudding when you actually look at the color of the oil. And so let's just go back here. When I look at the color, when you compare that color to those colors, it's hands down that this one, well, not that one, but this guy right here collected and filtered out the most amount of impurities of the compared to the other two. So clearly, it is definitely a much higher quality of output, when you use the one with the clamp. Now, when it comes to speed, the pore plate was the fastest by far. That thing just zipped right through it, because for obvious reasons you can just imagine why that would work so much faster. But overall, I found that the pore plate and the sintered one, those two, which really were much faster, were twice as fast as the one with the clamp, because you can imagine that the clamp's got a much smaller aperture, right? And then it's because of the way it's designed, nothing's going to get around it, or not as much is going to get around it. So the speed was quite remarkable. The clamp was 2 to 3 times slower than the other two, the clamp was. Okay. Now, in terms of cleaning, I think what's really important about the cleaning is, that's got to be something you have to consider. And so easily the Pore plate wins that one. It's so much easier to clean, and I'm going to tell you the other two are hard. But you just run some hot soapy water through that with the vacuum on, and you should be able to be okay. But clearly, cleaning that thing is going to be is not. It takes some effort. Okay, the coarse ones, and then in terms of replacement parts, the thing about replacement parts, when you look at these three, I went looking for replacement parts, and so now these little glass flasks right here, these two guys, they cost about $13 on eBay. And then you look at these two filters, the funnels. This guy costs about $30 something, and this one costs like $28. And so they're not that expensive. Once you own these guys, and this guy will never get plugged up, so this is like a permanent filter. You'll never have to do anything else. This guy and this guy, because of that sintered filter plate right there, it's going to get plugged up one day, and you're going to need to replace it. And so I buy the, I actually, like you saw, I have 3 of them, and they're like $23 each. So you can just buy another one if this gets full, and you're good to go. And these flasks probably will last forever unless you drop one. This guy, the clamp one, I looked all over, and there are no replacement parts, and I'm sure I didn't find it, and there are, but I couldn't find them, and I gave it a good 15 minutes of hardcore searching, and I'm good at searching. So with the lack of easily to find replacement parts, meaning when this sintered plate gets so cluttered or so clogged that you got to replace it, you're going to have to buy the whole rig, and the whole rig is going to be a little bit pricier. So in conclusion, when you look at the quality of the output, and you look at having to replace the speed and so forth, and how easy it is to clean, I'm on the fence, but I am heavily leaning towards the fact that I really like this model, because up till now, this is what I have been doing. I've been using the sintered glass filter plate on a funnel, and so I paid for like $38 for this thing, but you saw it comes out cloudy, right? It comes out muddy, and so then I would just run it through here like with a 10 or 22, and then depending on the type of C60, and then I would toss it in one of these, and I'd run it at 0.22, and it'd come out that beautiful purple. And so every time I run a batch, I bought this thing, it's a kind of a permanent thing, but I have to use papers here, right? So I'm always burning up money to using papers, which you will on this one, right? But pretty much I'd paid for that thing, and it's running, but I had to keep buying one of these. I buy, a case at a time, but I burn one of these every time I run a batch. So over time, it's going to be very expensive, right? Because it's $11 a batch. But this guy, I'm figuring that for $49, right, I can buy this thing, and all I got to do is put in papers like I would over here, but it's going to probably last a good long time as long as I keep it really clean, and overall it's going to be the cheaper alternative. Cheaper and better quality. And so I am so impressed with the output from this guy that, from now on, this is going to be my go-to once I burn up all of these. Now, lastly, I want to just kind of tell you, because right now, I took the muddy the muddy output from the other two funnels, and I poured it into this clamp one, and I hooked it up to the Swift. So while I'm making this video, this thing's running, and I just ran over and took a quick picture of it, and look at how beautiful the purple is. So it's I proved it. Those other two filters, they're not as good from an output standpoint, and so this one is clearly the better filter. Using the same paper now, it's the better filter. So this is really my recommendation. If you're looking for a filter and you haven't bought one yet, then this is the way to go. And you will literally have the highest quality output you can get without having to kind of like keep burning these these plastic ones, because these plastic ones they're really good. I mean, they work really well. You get that beautiful purple every time. But if you can get that beautiful purple with this guy, you're good to go. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's kind of this, nerdy kind of topic, but thank you for stopping by and listening to me ramble about vacuum filters. I hope I didn't ramble too badly, and I do appreciate all your kind comments from my last video. It was very, very, very touching. I did find something new about that as well, and basically, C60 is really good for a lot of different things, but C60 will not mend a broken heart. So anyway, that is something that we all learn. So thank you again for stopping by and spending some time with me and watching my video. If you have any questions, again, we have a Telegram C60 chat group for people who like to make C60. So if you have any questions that you're trying to do your own project, just jump on in, and there'll be a whole bunch of people be really happy to answer your questions. Alrighty? So thanks again. Have a great day. Aloha.